What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some sequels that I would like to see, following the news, of course, of Larian Studios moving on from Baldur's Gate 3 and Dungeons & Dragons, which is a move I can't help but respect, truth be told, has nonetheless prompted me to think about a few other games that I would really love to see sequels for. And to that end, obviously, we're talking about these games, but if you've followed the channel long enough, there's a fair few games I would say that I have been pretty vocal about wanting sequels for, and outside a single one of them, which is my most wanted sequel, none of them are on this list. Simply because I talk about them all the time, so things like a Tyranny sequel or Pillars of Eternity, the usual suspects basically, won't be on this list because everyone knows I would love those sequels. And with that exact thing in mind, with this particular list, I would say some of these are much more likely than others. In fact, one or two of them I would say are almost guaranteed, with others being extremely unlikely. So with any luck, I'll have managed to make this a bit interesting. So, kicking it off right out of the gate here with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. A sequel I would absolutely love to see, following up, of course, the incredibly immersive title of Kingdom Come Deliverance. Now, lucky for us, this is one of those titles that is all but confirmed, basically. And while I don't believe there was ever a formal announcement of work beginning, there have been leaks, rumors. We know that the developer Warhorse Studios is in fact working on something. So I think in this particular instance, it's more of a case of when rather than if, but nonetheless, I think there's a lot of things you could improve about the formula of Kingdom Come Deliverance to deliver a really great experience, because the first game, while a little janky as it was the studio's first title, born from a Kickstarter project and everything else, it's really amazing to see how far that game came to simply exist. And in many ways, I would say it greatly reminds me of The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Minus, of course, the fantasy and magic, as this is set in proper medieval times. But realistically, I think if they take this one, refine some of its rough edges, and tell an amazing story at the same time, as Kingdom Come 1 here does end on a bit of an unsatisfying note, then I think they could have a pretty big hit on their hands, as this is one of those sequels that is highly requested. I think it would do quite well. So hopefully we get it sooner rather than later. Now, next up on the list, we then have Control. Another one that I think is somewhat likely, though not necessarily guaranteed by any means, as Control is from Remedy Entertainment, who just last year released Alan Wake 2 to quite a bit of acclaim, if you will, though it did only release on the Epic Games Store for PC, which is why I haven't taken a look at it personally. But the thing about both the Alan Wake series and the Control series is that they are set in Remedy's connected universe, a universe that is populated by paranormal happenings, and in Control, we take control of Jesse Faden, who becomes the head of a Bureau of Paranormal Investigations, and this, of course, sees us investigating and interacting with all sorts of paranormal occurrences in a way that greatly reminds me of something like the SCP Foundation type stuff, which has a fantastic way of capturing your imagination thanks to the wide-reaching possibilities of something like that. Control in particular, though, I think had this really fantastic framing device of you being involved in this bureau that has the job of investigating it, and while Control is set within a single building technically, that sees us getting that situation under control and getting the bureau sorted out after a paranormal incident, let's say, I think it would be really cool to follow that up with a structure more akin to actually doing what the bureau is supposed to do, going out in the world and investigating these things. Could make for a really, really fun sequel, which is why, of course, I hope we actually manage to see it one day. To mix it up a little bit, third on the list, we have a title that is pretty much guaranteed to not get a sequel, at least anytime soon. And that is Expeditions Rome, or the Expeditions series if you prefer. You see, Expeditions Rome was actually my personal favorite game of 2022. It was developed by a company called Logic Artists. Logic Artists split up and disbanded basically after the release of Expeditions Rome, only to be reformed by some of its key members under the name of Campfire Cabal. Cabal. Unfortunately for everyone, Campfire Cabal was owned by Embracer Group, who shut it down in their series of layoffs and closures, followed by a significant investment that fell through, and thus the people who were actively working on expanding the Expedition series, like that's literally what they were developing when they were closed down, now obviously isn't doing that, which means a sequel to this game isn't likely. But Expeditions Rome kind of mixed TRPGs with CRPGs, where we take on an alternative history reimagining of Julius Caesar's life with a bit of fantasy and mythology kind of sprinkled in there, though it keeps it mostly on the level, I would say. And as odd as that sounds, it was really a fantastic game. Again, my favorite game from 2022. And it's a real shame that we're unlikely to get one of these within, I would say, the next decade at the very least, because it's certainly a series that deserves another sequel. That does bring us to number 4 on the list, and this one is, again, I think a series that is likely to continue, and that is a sequel to Lies of P. One of the standout releases last year, which is saying something considering how packed 2023 was, but Lies of P puts us effectively in the role of Pinocchio, except it is a dark and gritty fantasy world where we have to get to the bottom of some problems troubling the island of Krat. It is quite well done, and while it did have a few problems, most of those were ironed out very quickly by the game's developer, and if they take their experiences from this, especially some of its more interesting systems like its weapon customization system that saw you changing out weapons and handles for those weapons to make something unique for you, including what stats it scaled off of, I think they could have something really fun. Now, I say we're likely to get a sequel for this one because a post-credit scene teased exactly that. And given that this one is based off of an old fable and the teaser also seemed to suggest something to do with Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, I think it's likely to continue in this somewhat bizarre vein. Either way though, I would absolutely be down for it. I would say though that the one thing they could definitely improve in the sequel is a name that is a little less ridiculous. Which brings me to my final entry. This one I saved because there is quite literally no other game sequel I want more than this, and that is another entry into the Divinity series from Larian Studios themselves. Now, it's important that I mention that technically this would probably be Divinity 3 in some form, but what people may not realize because they don't love the world quite as much as I do is that Divinity Original Sin 2 and Divinity 2 are two separate games. Divinity 2 is actually a third-person action adventure from the 2000s, and Original Sin 2 is of course an isometric CRPG. But the thing is, Divinity 2, Ego Draconis as it's known, is actually the farthest along in the Divinity series timeline. And what's more, it picks up a lot of the plot threads that were started in the original titles with Damien, which is only briefly mentioned in Original Sin 2, alongside the entire demon race, the Chaos God, because Damien is a servant and partial avatar of the God of Chaos, and all of that stuff never really got a conclusion because following Divinity 2, they then went on to make prequels technically. And I am actually very partial to the Divinity universe. I find it incredibly captivating for some reason, which is a little bit odd. And if you find yourself wondering just how much it is I would want a sequel to this more than anything, I think the best way to prove it to you is to tell you this. After this video's over, go to the YouTube search bar, type in Divinity Lore, and count how many of my videos pop up, because this channel used to do nothing but cover those games. While Larian has expressed an interest in getting back to the Divinity series at some point, it doesn't look like this one's going to be anytime soon, however, but I'm hoping sometime within the next decade, because unbeknownst to everyone, all of these reviews and videos I've been making are me just killing time until I can make more Divinity lore videos, which I need a new game for, which is my true passion. But in all seriousness, I hope you enjoyed the list, hope you found it interesting. I'd love to know about some games you would love sequels for. Again, some ones I myself left off of this list. Arcanum is always one that comes to mind, and technically that one's possible, but I don't think it's likely, just to give an example. Now, all of that obviously means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.